What does emotional intelligence actually mean?
People typically think that it means you're just calm all the time, and it's not true.
What is self-awareness? And can you become more self-aware?
Yes, and you have to. You have to. Self-awareness is the bedrock of emotional intelligence.
Where does self-awareness show up for a business owner?
The F word that founders don't like and leaders don't like and people in general don't like. And it's feedback. You can have a low EQ reaction. Just make sure you rebound with a high EQ response. What do we do with the low EQ folks that stay there? And
today's guest is Farah Harris, an expert on emotional intelligence, licensed therapist, founder of Working Well Daily, and international best-selling author of The Color of Emotional Intelligence. Farah, welcome to the show. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you coming down. Appreciate you making the journey.
Yes.
Some things that we're going to discuss today, if you guys are curious, this is one I'm excited about, is why emotional intelligence might be the most underrated skill in business, the role EQ plays in leadership, decision-making, and scaling a company, how founders can build stronger teams, culture, and trust, and some actionable things that you can do today to increase your level of EQ. So let's get into it. So I think we need to start with this because everyone's heard the word emotional intelligence, EQ, but what does emotional intelligence actually mean?
Yeah.
And why does it matter for founders?
Well, it's the understanding, the knowing, the responding to emotions within yourself and with others. People typically think that it means you're just calm all the time, and it's not true. More so that you know how to stay regulated under pressure. And so the more you're able to master how emotions show up within your body and your responses and how you're able to regulate when emotions show up for somebody else, to my parents out there who, you see your kids having a tantrum, we will all of a sudden match them, and that's not helpful.
Right.
And so it's really the skill of being smart about feelings.
Now, I read this, the kind of the 5 different types or elements of EQ. Do you subscribe to this? Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills?
Yes, we use different names. I would put motivation under the self-regulation. So
Okay.
I think of it more under 4 domains. So the self-awareness, the self-regulation or self-management, the social awareness, and then relationship management. So it's kind of like 2 that have to do with you and 2 that have to do with everybody else.
Okay. Can we break each one of those down?
Yes,
Like,
we
what is
can.
self-awareness? And can you become more self-aware?
Yes, and you have to. You have to. Self-awareness is the bedrock of emotional intelligence. It is where not only are you aware of the emotion, like naming it, oh, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry, but it's also being aware of how it's showing up in your body. So when you're angry, what does your body do? For some people, they get hot, they get tense, they clench up. We don't practice taking a pause and being able to ask ourselves, what am I feeling right now? Sometimes we're so quick to maybe name it that it's okay, but where is it showing up for you? Because our bodies will let us know how we feel sooner than the thought pops in going oh, I think I'm angry or I think I'm hungry or whatever it is. But the thing that I like to add is that for those who have experienced trauma, like either physical trauma or sexual trauma, where you may have learned to disassociate yourself from your body because either you felt like your body reacted in a way that you didn't want, or it just was possibly given a narrative that what you're feeling is not necessarily true. So, if you said no, but your body said yes, or what happened to you didn't really happen to you if you're gaslit from external individuals, you'll just go, I can't trust it. So even when you have that gut feeling maybe this isn't the right thing to do, or I'm not sure about going into this place, or should I trust this person? Learn to start practicing that pause and going, okay, no, my body is feeling tense. What does that mean? Because feelings are just data. It's not always fact, but they are data. They're there to give us information for us to become more of self-auditors, what is happening to me in the moment. And to your second point of can we increase it? Yeah, definitely. By practicing the simple question of how am I feeling right now? And it seems so simple, but like as I said, if you have history of trauma, that's not an easy question. We can gaslight ourselves too. We're like, or we will add an emotion to an emotion, like it's just so stupid that I'm anxious about this, or you're angry that you're angry, which doesn't allow you actually to get to the root of what you're feeling. Now you're so focused on the judgmental emotion that you can't actually sit with the real emotion that you're feeling. So taking that moment, first thing in the morning without judgment, how am I feeling right now? Is it a new project that's happening today? Is that excitement or is that worry? How did I sleep? Am I tired? What do I may need to do so that I don't jack up everybody else's day because I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Those types of things. And then, maybe at lunchtime and then maybe right before you go to bed, how do I feel about the day? The more you can practice in real time, just asking yourself, how am I feeling? What is my body doing?
Yeah.
That's the buildup of that awareness muscle. Because it's literally that, just practicing that mindfulness, present moment of, oh, I need a drink of water. I'm a little dehydrated. Oh, I'm actually a little hungry. I joke that I'm a walking Snickers commercial. I need to eat. So, being aware, oh, my irritability is because this happened, or, physically, these are the things that I need to keep me regulated, which goes to the next point of self-regulation or self-management. I joke in my book that it's in the wise words of Ice Cube, it's the check yourself before you wreck yourself part of the skill. So this is where we are learning to find ways to manage and regulate ourselves in healthy ways. We have learned to regulate, but not always in healthy ways. Sometimes we go, I just need a glass of wine. Okay, there's nothing wrong with a glass of wine. But if you're always reaching for liquor or food or a person, then you might not actually be regulating. You might be avoiding. You might be,
That's an interesting one. Can we pause on that?
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of founders listening right now that after a long day's work, and then sometimes that ends up being every single day because they work hard every day, is after work, I'm going to pour myself a glass of wine or a couple glasses of wine or a few beers. And I think part of
just to get the edge off.
Yeah, and people just say it just kind of helps me wind down. It helps me kind of relax. I've worked my ass off all day. I deserve it, whatever it might be. We've normalized the alcohol consumption on almost a daily basis. What's really going on in someone's in their mind when they're doing this?
Yeah, and the question is, to your point, what's the narrative? What's the story? Where did I learn this? Am I actually winding down, or am I trying to numb an emotion that I don't feel like dealing with right now? Am I taking the buildup of the day and pushing it into the next day? And then, if it's every single day, this is your routine, what are we not dealing with? What are we not addressing? Again, there's nothing wrong. I'm not knocking anyone who's like, what's wrong with a glass of wine? Not knocking that, or a beer or whatever. But ask yourself, is that your go-to every time you're stressed? Because it might not just be the day. It could be the weekend and you're not working.
Right, that's right.
But you had a conversation that was uncomfortable. Then all of a sudden, I'm reaching for that bottle. So we don't want to start creating another problem trying to avoid a problem. And so it's really asking yourself, why do I choose this as my form of regulation?
And I think people listening might say, because I've been here too, I think a lot of us have, right? Where it's like, I'm drinking too much wine, or I'm doing this too much, or I'm spending this much time on the phone, or whatever it is.
Retail therapy.
Yeah, whatever it is, right? And I think a lot of people listening would say, okay, Farah, but there's nothing I'm hiding from. I don't have some big problem. I just like drinking some wine or having some beers after work. Do you think there's something probably underneath that they're not looking at?
There's nothing that we do that does not have a root story.
Yeah.
Even the things that we enjoy that are positive, we do it for a reason. It reminds us of something. It fills something up for us. So it's like, oh, I like to paint. Well, why do you like to paint? Well, when I was 5, me and my mom, if you really take a moment and think back, oh, this is when I started doing that. Because it could have been that you started to do, drink when you were in law school. I'm just thinking because I was working with a law firm last week, and it was to help me study for exams, or after an exam, this is how I rewarded myself for pushing through. So ask yourself, like, when did this habit start? And has it maintained or has it increased, right? Like you said, you go for one, but then now it's two, and now it's the whole bottle.
Right,
and
right,
so
exactly.
you're like, oh, am I getting better with regulating my emotions, or am I needing more to numb the pain? And so when I talk about that self-management piece, it's have I learned how to take a breath? Can I count to 10? I joke. Some of y'all may need to count to 100 or more. No judgment. It's just like whatever you need to do to find that homeostasis of where your internal monologue, your place of capacity is at this place where you kind of go, yes, there's chaos around me, yet I can be the calm in the storm.
You know what else is interesting too?
Yeah.
Like, we take vacations and it's like instantly drinking and alcohol is mandatory for every vacation. It's like, I'm going to let loose for a lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah. For some, they do not do that. But, and again, no judgment here. You can do whatever you want. But I think we should ask ourselves why. I think we should be curious as to why we're telling ourselves this story that a vacation means drinking every single day and wilding out and just being,
overeating,
and then coming back feeling like shit, eating bad. Is that a vacation, or is that what we've painted the story, or someone else has painted the story in our mind of what a vacation should be?
Again, there's like micro cultures, sometimes drinking is part of a culture, and it's just like, okay, but just because something's part of your culture, you still need to ask yourself as an individual, does it serve me?
Yeah.
So there's things that we may have had in our own microculture of family, and then we may have it if we come from different ethnic backgrounds, so we expand the lens a little bit more, and then we expand it a little bit more. But even if you're talking about your own family, do you have siblings?
Yeah, brother.
Okay. Do you think he had the same experience you had?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Older or younger?
Older.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I'm an oldest child, so yes, I can already resonate with you.
Yeah, for sure.
You had different parents. They were probably in different, financial bracket. They probably were in a different level of stress and managing, and age-wise in terms of wisdom and understanding. So if you within your own family, that you have your own familial culture, are having different experiences, why are we not viewing that from a larger lens? So it's like, okay, well, within my family, we all drink. And you might be that one person who goes, but I don't feel like drinking is working for me.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
It's like, if it works for them, which it probably really isn't, but, if it works for them, okay. But as an individual, how do you still have agency in the midst of a culture that rewards drinking? And, for those who are, networking, and it's always like at a networking event, after work event, there's always alcohol. And if you're the lone person that doesn't drink, people are looking at you like, are you sure?
Yeah,
are you okay? Do you have a problem? And it was like, well, it's none of your business. And you never know if that person's coming out of recovery. You don't know if they have an allergy, because there is like some folks that have some, what is it? Alcohol. What is the word that I'm looking for?
Yeah, they're basically allergic to alcohol.
Yeah,
right?
there's a term for it. Though. And and then there's some people who are just like, I don't even like the taste. And or stories like, my dad was an alcoholic, and I promised I would never do the same thing.
Or you just want to be clear. You don't want to be foggy.
I want to be able to be
out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to be aware of what's happening. And especially for women, I want to make sure that it's a safe space for me. So it's very interesting when someone recognizes that they have a habit like drinking. You not drinking, sometimes they're projecting their discomfort that you found a way to manage all of your emotions and whatever in a sober-minded way that triggers them. So that's where I think sometimes the peer pressure comes in, or the judgment, or like, you're just a weakling or whatever. Again, it's like, what's the story that they're telling themselves?
Yeah.
And then you not doing it is highlighting that story that they're telling themselves. And so I don't want to deal with the shame, so I'm going to project that shame onto you.
Really, they're jealous because you're strong and you're able to say no, and they can't.
In that area, right. And then there are some people who just have this need to, I want everybody to be happy and we're all doing something together. I don't want to leave anybody out. So there's different things and nuances that happen in that moment. But to your earlier point, it is really to ask that question. Am I doing this to serve me better? Is this actually helpful? Or is there a story that I've put here that helps me to kind of disassociate, numb, and mask things that I actually just don't want to deal with right now?
Yeah. That's always the key. Get curious, ask yourself what's really going on. Obviously, alcohol is a part of our culture in a certain way and societies and things like that. And so again, I'm not condemning it. I enjoy my wine and stuff, but I'm also considering like maybe I want to just not do any of it and just see how that feels for 3 months or something, right? And just, I think again, have you tried the other alternative? Have you given yourself an opportunity to see what it's like? Because you may go, whoa, this is a whole new world that I actually like way better than the other one. And I think you could use this. You could use this example for almost anything that we do in life.
Oh, 100%.
Let me try something else and see if this works and serves me better.
Yeah. And I mean, and our brains thrive off of novelty. And at the same time, we live in this cognitive dissonance because our brain also thrives on keeping us safe.
And comfortable. Yeah.
And comfortable.
Exactly.
So it's like,
it is an interesting dynamic.
It is a very interesting dynamic. And we have to figure out a way to kind of like walk that line of how am I evolving and getting my brain to stay plastic, that neuroplasticity of like change and growth and emerging and evolving, at the same time recognizing it's also like, can we stay safe? Can we keep it simple?
Yeah, exactly.
Can we do what we've already learned to do?
Yeah.
So that growth is doing those micro experiments, like you said, like, oh, what would it be like if I'm typically drinking every weekend to not do it for a month? You know, how will I feel? Do I recognize a change in my body? Those type of things. I think back to someone who was talking about that they were trying to change like their eating habits, and they didn't realize how bloated they felt, after eating, pastas or something or breads. But when you're so used to that and your body's been used to that, when you take it out, it's like, oh, and then you reintroduce it and your body goes like,
Yeah.
Okay, it's giving you data. This is not what's working for me. I feel lighter without it, though I love the taste. How do I maybe incorporate it in moderation, that kind of stuff. But even with COVID, I'm thinking back to not even like food and drinking, but just energy. So I have a colleague who she was like, man, I loved conferences and being around the people and all this other stuff. And so we had the lockdown and then the world opens up again and she's back to doing work. And she was like, oh my gosh, Farah, like I just wanted to run to my hotel room after my session, which was so not me before. And I was like, well, maybe before we were so indoctrinated in this is what you have to do. Like you have to be the extrovert, you have to be on, you have to do the networking. And you've learned that your body actually enjoys, and your mind, quiet and some solitude and just a moment to, step away for a little bit. And so she's trying, and it has been trying for the last couple of years of like managing this new normal for her, where she's like, I thought I was that person, but now I realize I'm actually more aligned with this person who, due to external circumstances out of my control, highlighted for me that I was operating here and not here like great, like here like I am on
maxed
all
out.
the time. And to bring it down and go like, actually, this is the level that I want to be operating in. And so that really requires us to, like you said, get curious, be self-auditors, really ask ourselves, like, is this how I want to continue? Is this how I want to show up? How does this feel in my body? How does this feel in my heart? How does this feel in my mind? Does it give me clarity? Does it give me energy? And I just don't think we do that enough.
I agree. From a business owner standpoint, let's put ourselves in the shoes of a founder. You're running a company, maybe you've got a small team, medium-sized, large team, whatever it is. Where does self-awareness show up for a business owner? How do you know if you're not being self-aware, or how do you know if maybe you are being self-aware? What would the signs be?
Oh, goodness. The word that I often say is the F word that founders don't like and leaders don't like and people in general don't like, and it's feedback. Like, you cannot have self-awareness absent of feedback. You can sit there and say, and we just talked about parenting. So, you can say, oh, I'm the most patient partner. I'm the most patient dad. Okay, let me ask your kids.
Right.
And so the same thing, if you're a founder and you think that you're a great listener, you think that you are open to ideas, you think that you are leading by example in a great way, let me ask your team that. Would your team say the same thing about you that you say about yourself? And if you hesitate in that moment, then the answer is probably no. So, we have this way of thinking more grand of ourselves than we actually are. And so the practice of increasing your self-awareness and to make sure that you're landing on others the way that you want to land on others is literally asking, like, hey, how am I showing up for you? I thought that I was really patient in this meeting. Was I? It's uncomfortable to ask.
How do you ask for that feedback without them saying, oh, no, Farah, you're my boss. Like, you're great. No, you're totally fine, right? Like, how do you get real feedback from your employees?
The real feedback... My brain is going multiple places. So to y'all listening, I got ADHD, so the dots are connecting, but it takes a little while sometimes. Because the vision that I'm seeing in my head is, to your point, there's a hierarchy that's there. You're the boss.
Status, yeah.
Can I really say something to you? So now you've actually started going down the street of psychological safety. Is it actually safe for me to give you feedback? If you're as a boss saying, oh, I have an environment, a team, a culture that's totally open. Maybe. Yeah. And so sometimes it starts with, not necessarily at work. Is this a practice that you're doing at home? Is this a practice that you're doing with your friends? Hey, can I ask you an opinion? This is how this meeting panned out today. This is how I responded. How would that have landed on you? Then they can, so you, in a way, you can kind of cheat and find your safe people. Hopefully they're your partner or your dear friend, and you have not created an unsafe relationship there, that they can be real with you. And then at work, it's like, is there someone who is not necessarily a direct report that's several levels below you, but someone that you can almost view as a peer? Ask them that question. Or even in a group meeting, just get the general feedback, not necessarily about you, but just kind of like, hey, how do you all think that today's session went? Is there something that we missed? If there could be a question that you didn't get a chance to ask, you can ask it now, what would it be? Or, again, some people are slower processors. Can you shoot me an email afterwards about how you thought this landed? Mm-hmm. But feedback has to be part of the culture. It can't be this one-off, let me ask you today and never ask you again. It has to be right after the meeting, in the meeting, during the one-on-ones, during the end of the year, performance reviews. What I often see is founders and leaders, managers, whomever, are waiting until the end. And it's not even to get feedback for themselves. It's to give feedback, which is really not even true feedback, to their team members. That's very opinionated and very subjective. If it's part of your day-to-day conversation, hey, how do you feel about that? I'm thinking about this, but I would love to get your thoughts on it. If that is what you're doing on a day-to-day, and here's a key thing, when they give you the feedback, how are you responding? So this is the whole check yourself before you wreck yourself, the self-management piece. If you have not learned how to stay regulated while getting uncomfortable, very frank, maybe very critical feedback, they're going to shut down and not give it to you. Unless you have a jackass that works and just doesn't care and be like, I'll tell you exactly how I feel about you. And they already probably are getting ready to update their LinkedIn and
exactly
leave, so they don't care. But if it's true and authentic that this is what you want, you have to be able to sit and take it, and they have to watch you process it without knowing that there's going to be retribution, consequences, you using it against them.
So let's say we're in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the employee. Mm-hmm. You're the boss, the leader. Mm-hmm. And I say, Farah, I think in that meeting you were pretty abrasive towards one of the, the employees. I think you just came across like you were a little bit angry instead of trying to like help inspire people.
Yeah.
What do you say then? If we're in this conversation right now, I'm like, you're just kind of abrasive, and I think it came across a little harsh.
Ouch. So, okay. Two different leaders. So you got one leader that would go, you know what? I think you might be right. If that leader's aware, and they recognized they didn't have their Snickers.
Yeah, right.
If they recognize, someone cut them off on the way to work, or they're dealing with some personal stuff and it's popping up in the meeting, giving that feedback is like, I can't lie. You're right. That was wrong. There was no need for me to raise my voice in that manner. I have a lot of stuff going on right now. That's not an excuse, but I need to make things right. And to hold yourself accountable, go directly to that person and say you apologize, and then also go to the team and say, hey, in the meeting earlier today or the following day, hey, in the meeting yesterday, I have some personal things going on. I took it out on Janet, and I apologize to her, and I apologize to you all, because that's not the dynamic that I want here in our team.
That's a good leader.
That's a high EQ,
Yeah.
great leader. Then you have others who will be like, well, what exactly do you mean? What do you mean I was abrasive? Like, what did I say? Did I say something wrong?
Instantly you're on the defensive now as an employee. I'm thinking, oh shit, they're challenging me and they're my boss, and maybe am I out of line for saying this in the first place?
Because they're going to, it's great to be able to give feedback and make sure that when you're giving it, you're giving clear examples.
Right.
Right. So don't just be like, oh, I think that was a little bit abrasive. Well, what?
Right.
What was abrasive?
Right. When you said this to Janet in this way, I think it made her feel this way.
Yes.
I felt this way.
You're right. Giving clear examples, because, and I've had this happen in work and at home, where it's like, well, Farah, you showed up this way. Okay, can you give me an example? Well, I can't. And I said, well, how do you want me to change if I can't have a reference point to when something like this happens again?
Yeah.
This is what I will do different.
Yeah.
So now you're just giving me an opinion and not actually giving me true feedback where I can follow, some kind of direction. So yeah, if you're that employer and goes like, hey, I think this was a little abrasive, and I get defensive, the issue is, you guys don't listen. Like, we are working on a deadline here, and you guys don't see the urgency. And this is where, again, defensiveness kicks in. The person's like, well, and if they can hold their ground, if they have high EQ, because sometimes you have to manage up. Okay, I get that it's hard, but do you want us to show up for our client in the best way? If that's what you want, we need to have higher morale, and that's going to be killing morale if you continue to talk to Janet that way and any of us that way. It can take, and I want to be gracious here. You can still be a jerk in that moment as a leader, be defensive as hell. They feel like, all right, well, it's like talking to a wall. But if you have some kind of sense, a morsel of sense, to then sit back, maybe even call a colleague, a fellow founder, someone you can trust, a mentor, and share that conversation, process that conversation, and then come back to that person going like, hey, earlier when you told me that and I didn't want to hear it, I heard it and I hear you now. When I do my training and facilitating and coaching, I'm always saying you can have a low EQ reaction. Just make sure you rebound with a high EQ response.
That's good.
Because you're going to step in crap all the time.
Yeah.
There's no one that's walking around with clean shoes. Like at some point, you're going to step in some poop. And the thing is, what do you do to recover? And if you are not recovering with your people are not going to trust you. So it's like you could have those bad moments, but you have to learn how to recover.
That is a great point. What if you disagree with the feedback that your employees give you? You just genuinely, you're not getting defensive. You're just like, I think that's off. They see it one way, but it's like, no, the reason I was doing is something totally different. What if it's just like completely off?
Is that always the case?
Let's just say it's a once in a while thing. And maybe an employee's been with you a few months. They bring something to you, how you're showing up. They give you an example, but it's just it's just off. Or maybe you were holding someone accountable the right way, but they felt like, hey, I feel like, doing that. And you're like, well, no, it's part of our culture. Like we want to hold people accountable and have high standards and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we have to, again, the feedback goes both ways. And there's times where we can actually, miss each other, where, how you think you're showing up is not necessarily landing on that person in a way that you thought was productive or positive. I even say this when discussing, topics like allyship. It's like, well, it's not about the intent, it's about the impact. So if the impact is not what you wanted, then you may need to change how that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the same time, sometimes people really do need context. And so once they receive the context, it's like, okay,
Right.
now this makes more sense.
Right.
Oftentimes we are making decisions, we are showing up with certain behaviors that our direct reports, our colleagues have no clue where it's coming from. We've all figured it out in our head. We're like, you don't understand how I'm actually making your life better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, are you?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you not know?
Yeah.
But if you, this goes to, we didn't get a chance to talk about it earlier, when we were breaking the two that have to do with you and the two domains that have to do with others. The relationship management piece is the effective communication.
Mm.
It's being able to mitigate conflict. It's being able to have the dialogue where people feel like you considered them. And oftentimes we will move from what we think is a very empathetic and altruistic, kind of way. And the person on the receiving end was like, I didn't ask for that. Who told you that's what I wanted?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
right.
it was like, but, bring people into the process with you, and then they can kind of see your perspective a little bit more. They may not agree. And the whole thing about empathy is it's not about agreeing. It's about understanding.
Mm.
And people misunderstand that, that means I have to be agreeable. No, it's okay. I'm coming to see your point of view. I'm coming alongside you and trying to help you to get to wherever it is that you need to go. Sometimes that helping is listening. Sometimes the helping is financially. Sometimes that helping is something physical. But it does not mean that you enable. It's that you are there to hold space for them while also keeping them accountable for whatever it is that they need to do. So when the feedback seems like something is not aligning, there may need to be better communication.
Some of the worst people I've worked with were the most defensive people. And it was just like brutal working with them, because and even before you were going to give feedback or ask for feedback or whatever it is, you would just feel like they're going to get instantly, they're going to get on the defensive right away.
Yeah.
And I go back to those people, and those people are not, the same people are also not very growth minded. They're not very curious. They're not developing themselves. I think this all goes back to, if you believe in growing yourself, mentally, spiritually, physically, whatever that looks like in your business, then part of that is that knowing thyself, self-regulation, working on relationships, being able to take feedback. You lean into that stuff, even though sometimes it stings. I mean, sometimes it hurts to get tough feedback.
Yes.
And it's like, damn, that fucking stings.
Yes.
I didn't think I was showing up like that, but I guess I am.
Mm-hmm.
But your ability to, I think, and I would just encourage leaders to pause after the feedback and just say,
what could be true?
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, that's
just
interesting.
what
Yeah.
could be true
Tell
of
me
that?
more about that, and have you seen this before? And this is interesting. I'm going to process this. You might need time you might say, let me process this for the next 24 hours. And can we talk about it, then if you need to, you might be able to just have the conversation then. But I think the point is, it's one, really taking it and learning something and being aware of it. And two, making sure that you're making your team or those around you, your family, feel like that they can have those conversations with you.
The defense comes from, a low EQ position. And when I say someone has low emotional intelligence, is that they're highly reactive. They don't know how to respond because they're operating from, in a way, their lower brain. They're operating from their survival brain, which is fight, flight, freeze, fawn. They have a very overactive amygdala, which is where all of our feelings are. And where our high EQ is our prefrontal cortex. That's where our rational thinking, logic, common sense comes from. And if you don't know how to regulate yourself, you actually can't reach
Yeah.
to that higher, brain to go like, wait, no, there's a better way to handle this.
Yeah.
We're immediate reactive primitive brain just going into I need to save myself. I have to stay safe. And
is that ego? Do you think ego is
that
the enemy?
is so ego, and that is also so family of origin trauma, learned narratives.
Yeah.
And so when I was like, I'm a student of emotional intelligence, though, yes, I teach on it and facilitate. I'm still a student.
Of course.
It's not something like there's this apex and you reach it. It's
Yeah.
like, no.
Congratulations, you've done it. Yeah.
No, it's literally every moment to moment is an opportunity for you to practice emotional intelligence. And so when I was like even thinking about, this work, maybe because of my clinical background, I was like, why are we not talking about emotional narratives? Like, why are we not talking about like how we even learned about feelings? We talk about it in a very practical or theoretical sense. However, for you to be smart about emotions, you need to even know where you learned about emotions. So if our family of origin, you learned to sweep everything under the rug, you learned how to keep the peace, you learned how to mask and pretend that everything is fine, do you not think that's not showing up at work? If you learned that to be aggressive, to be sarcastic, to maybe be physical, and that's what gets your way, and that's how you express, power and anger, how's that not showing up for you at work? So when you see the defensiveness, there's a story there of either I'm not competent, there's a fear of something going to be taken from me. Like, what are you taking away from me? The possibility for advancement. Are you questioning my my identity? All of these things are playing in their minds. And it does not allow them to, like you said, have this growth mindset. They're very stuck in survival mode. And so what we're thinking is resistance. We're thinking we're dealing with the jerk as someone who has not regulated their ego.
I think it's like low self-esteem too in a lot of ways too, isn't it? It could be.
It could be.
I think about like, everything we're describing here, and not to get, I won't get political here, but like there are certain leaders in this country.
Oh, with total low
we're just
EQ.
Describing, with like very, bottom of the bottom low EQ, where I go, wow, they're defensive. They're always right, never wrong. If something bad happens, it's not them, it's the other people. If something good happens, it's all
Always
of them.
them.
And I'm thinking, man, that's like the lowest of low EQ.
Yeah.
Like there's no, and I think it's ego, it's probably insecurities, never leaning in to say, hey, tell me more about that, or what makes you feel that way, or okay,
Because they would have to deal with it.
Right.
And
so how do we deal with those people? Do we just not have them in our lives?
Yeah.
In certain
It would
capacities,
be
it's
nice.
almost impossible to,
Yes.
but I'm just, you run across those people and
Yeah.
it's like, can you change those people? Do you try to?
I get this question all the time.
Yeah.
They're like, what do we do with the low EQ folks that like stay there? Because we all can have low EQ moments, but there are people who just
and don't seem to want to grow out of it.
Right. They pay a mortgage.
Yeah.
This is the residence of where I want to be. And the answer is you can't. You can't. You only have control over yourself. So you model the way you want other people to show up, but you can't make other people show up better unless they've made the decision to show up better. Like, wow, I really like the way Alex makes me feel. Like, wow, in this meeting it was tense, but I watched how he I watched how he even brought his voice down. Like he started to go up and then took a deep breath. Like, wow, like people are watching you the same way your kids are watching you. It's just like they're watching you manage difficult situations and see, oh, is this what you do?
Yeah, I think about that all the time.
So like my 7-year-old, like he'll drop something and he'll be like, uh-oh. And then I'll look at him and then, what I've been saying recently was like, accidents happen. And so he'll be like, Mom, accidents happen.
Yeah.
It changes their whole thing. Like, am I supposed to be in survival mode? Am I about to get in trouble? Are you going to get upset with me? Are you going to withhold love?
Yeah.
Same thing happens at work. And so when we run into these people, whether it's in the political place or whether it's, it's in school or in the workplace or in our own business, you have to realize that you can't change them until they want to be changed. Your responsibility is your your nervous system, how
Yep.
you show up, how you stay regulated. Hopefully you're modeling it, and because we never know what will be the light, the trigger that makes them go like, this isn't really working out for me.
Yeah.
Like no one likes me. Like
Yeah.
this sucks. And so something has to be a catalyst. I believe ideally it would be awesome for the catalyst to be internal, that
Yeah.
you make the decision.
Right.
But sometimes it's an external catalyst that's like, yeah, you've been let go like 5 times in 3 years because your attitude sucks. What are you going to do about it?
Mhm.
But then there's some people that you just can't outcoach.
Right. How do you look at the difference between EQ and IQ, especially today in the world of AI, where it seems like
goodness.
IQ's not as important as it once was?
I wish it was. Well, IQ, you can't necessarily increase that. Like, however your intelligence is, like, you to some level, but there's, I remember when you would take tests, it's like, your aptitude.
Yeah.
So there's this window.
Yeah, that's kind of your computer processing
yes,
chip, right?
Yeah, it's like,
how good is it?
You already have this natural ability to be so smart.
Right.
Emotional intelligence is literally wide open. Like, it's up to you to decide how well you want to embody feelings, experience feelings from others. And you have moments, like I said, every single day, every single moment is an opportunity to figure out, like, is that how I want to show up? Okay. And it's so easy. I was listening to something on my way here that I was like, oh, this is so aligned with my work. And it was just like, again, all about like nervous system reset. And it was like, if you are just consuming information and consuming knowledge and all of the EQ frameworks and, you can talk with the best of them, you're with Travis Bradbury and Daniel Goleman and you're like, yes, EQ this and EQ that. And then something happens at work and you lose it. What have you been actually putting into practice?
Right.
And so it's really I've learned to do meditation. Well, yeah, that's in a very curated environment. You turn down the lights, you lit the candles, and you did the breathing work. But when you're on a call with a client who's upset with you and they're cussing you out, you can't say, hold on, let me light some candles.
Right.
You have to decide in that moment, what do I know? What is happening in my body? How do I want to respond? What is in my toolbox for regulation? Because it can't be lighting candles in this moment. It can't be going for a run, So it's, okay, do I know how to take a deep breath? Am I choosing to be curious in the moment? Like, I can hear the frustration in your voice. Because usually what brings people down is just acknowledgement of their own feelings. Like, I could totally understand why you were upset right now. Because you expected one thing and we did not deliver. I completely understand. Oh, like now all of a sudden they're disarmed. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, you hear me. So it's like, I want to be able to address this situation, but I cannot address the situation if you're continuing to raise your voice at me, because I want to be able to hear you clearly and address your needs. Do we need to call back in 10 minutes? How do you want to move forward? But just getting to a point where you find a way to say, I'm going to level set myself to hopefully help somebody else come down with you too. Mm-hmm. But that can't be external. So that is like internal practice every single moment. When you're in traffic and you're getting irritable, what are you doing in the moment?
I think about that all the time because it's easy. Like someone cuts you off and you're like, this person versus saying, you know what? It's okay. And maybe they're on their way to something. Someone died.
I hope you get there safely.
Yeah, I hope you're okay. Maybe you have the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
I think that's just the self-regulation, right? Kicking in that, to your point, we all have our moments. But
we all
just
have our
noticing
moments.
it and saying, all right, that's not how I want to show up, or that's not serving me. I like that phrase. Does
It's
this serve me?
not serving me well. And I love what you just did there, because talking to yourself is actually a positive thing to do.
I do it all the time.
I think there's research, it's a level of intelligence, those who talk to themselves. And
it's
so
self-awareness,
It's self-awareness. And so it's like talking out loud. And it's funny when I have the kids in the car and someone does something crazy and I would go like, what was that? They're just like, Mom, and I was like, no, I have no problem honking a horn. Let me just make this clear. But there are times and places where I'm like, is that necessary?
Right.
If that's just your reaction because you're upset,
Yeah.
I don't need to honk the horn.
Right.
It's just like they're going to realize they're going to get to the same stop sign
Yeah.
and the same stoplight the same way. And then there's other times where they zoom past and it's like, wow, I hope you get there safely. It must be an emergency. I don't know if they have a pregnant woman in the car. I don't know if they just heard that, this was the last opportunity for them to see their grandpa. I don't know. But if I'm matching the energy and it's negative, what does that say about me?
And that's what it is. That you're letting outside forces control your own energy and feelings and emotions. And that's where it's like, you look at someone that flips out easily, and you're just like, they don't have very good emotional intelligence.
No.
Why are they letting all these external factors constantly
why is this getting to
set
you?
them afire and get upset? And it's like, dude, you got to regulate that.
Yeah. But again, it goes to, and people don't like bringing up childhood, but it's like, what happened that made you feel like this is how I need to respond?
Yeah.
If change was so constant and it wasn't exciting, it was always bringing some level of instability, then you're going to have that direct report or that colleague that when you're bringing in that new policy or that new process, you brought up AI, we're going to bring it. What do you mean? They're going to be resistant, not because they're jerks. It's because you haven't done the relationship management piece of effectively communicating to lower that threat threshold for them to explain, hey, this is how we're going to do it. You will get trained so you will understand how to use this. This is actually going to help decrease your workload over here, which I'm hoping will then enable you to have more space to be more creative or whatever. But usually we just implement stuff and then expect everybody in the team to be like, yay,
Right.
Great, another initiative. And then, and show up well. And it's like, you didn't explain to me why we have this. What is it doing? How is it going to impact my day-to-day work? Because I have a way of doing stuff.
Right.
And now you've interrupted it. And if you're a person of a certain generation who their identity is so attached to their work, and you sat here and you brought in this tech and they're not tech savvy, now they're questioning, I used to be very competent here. I felt good about this. I showed up well. My performance was here. Now you brought something that's making me uncomfortable. So now I'm second guessing myself. So now my engagement and my performance is going down. And that's the fear. That's the resistance. That's why they're not doing whatever you've told them. Like, well, no, George, the process is this now. I don't care about that process. Okay, is he really being a jerk, or did we not communicate effectively and encourage and support him in the new shift? So this is the thing where it's like, man, that just sounds like extra work, Farah. Why can't people get it together? It's like, we're all coming with our stuff.
Yeah.
And it's nice and ideal to think that we can leave our stuff at the door, but we don't. And it's going to be in the way we communicate. It's going to be in the passive aggressiveness. It's going to be in the assertiveness. It's going to be in the avoidance. It's going to be in all of that. And so the more you're able as a founder, as a leader, as a manager, to know how to internally regulate, you will be better present when that dysregulation happens to those outside.
So let's say you have 100 points, and I say you can distribute these 100 points towards either EQ, IQ, mix of both. How much would you put in each bucket?
I would put more in the EQ bucket.
Would it be 60-40?
I would say that sounds about right, because you want them to still have a level of intelligence to be capable to do the work.
And critical thinking and solving problems. I mean, I think that stuff still matters.
That still matters. And even the critical thinking, there's this gray overlap between the EQ and the IQ, because you still need to be a critical thinker, because with emotional intelligence, when you come to that resolution, when you come to whatever is revealed, how are you managing those emotions when that comes? It's like you critically think about the way that you showed up today and you realize like you showed up as a jackass. How do you feel about that? Are you now going to judge yourself like, I am the worst leader ever? I can't believe these people, continue to work for me. And now it's not helpful. It's not serving. So it's being able to manage the information well, emotionally handle the data points, the intellect, the physical, data that you're receiving, the emotional data, you're able to do it well. And I rather you be more highly emotionally intelligent and still need training on skills
Yeah.
than being highly skill-based and with low EQ. Because again, I'm thinking about the culture.
Right.
Like if this is going to impede us having a healthy work culture because you just don't know how to people. So I'm always saying, I'm trying to help people better.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't know how to people, it's going to kill the morale. It's going to, stop flow, and a nice flow within the organization. And what I've seen time after time is they'll have somebody with high IQ, great in skill, great in performance, low EQ. No one wants to work with them. And it devastates teams when leaders don't address it quickly. It's like, okay, you let this bad actor stay here, and now it's like the bad apple that ruins the barrel. Like it starts to seep into everybody else. And I've also seen people lose opportunities because word came to board members you're trying to get who to be partner? Oh, hell to the no. We do not agree. And they're like, oh, we thought, because he was bringing in so much money. It's if he becomes partner, I'm not going to stay. And that's when you start realizing just because you have a high performer does not mean that you're going to keep other top talent around if that person is not able to, quote unquote, be coachable and hey, you got to work on how you're landing on folks because it ain't working right now.
Yeah. What's one weak spot for you right now when it comes to EQ? What's one gap that you see for yourself?
No one's ever asked me that question. That's so funny because I literally was processing this on my way as I was listening to the other podcast that was talking about that nervous system.
Well, I think because people hear you're very articulate, you have great insights, and I think people think, man, does she struggle at all?
I do, and I promise you, marriage and children are a mirror.
Yeah, that's right.
So I often see it happening in my personal than in my professional. And I think this is why I'm so adamant about teaching it in the professional spaces because, I came from a corporate background. My husband still is in corporate. When I was seeing therapy clients, yes, they were coming home with their own personal stuff, but work was the majority of their life. And they were coming with stuff. And I was like, it's so interesting how at times we can actually have higher emotional intelligence at work with strangers, with people who we don't love, but we want to, quote unquote, show up well for them. And we perform. We perform the EQ, and then we come home and we're tired and we're dysregulated because we've done all of this performance. And because we know that these people love us and they will still accept us at our worst, we will show up with low EQ at home.
Interesting.
So it's like I bit my tongue when, my boss said this to me, or I didn't really respond the way I wanted to respond to this client when we had our conversation. But now that I'm home, I'm going to either shut down or I'm going to be rude and condescending to my partner or to my kids or whatever. And they're like, what the hell did we do to you? And I was just seeing that play out, and I was seeing it play out in my home, with my husband and even with myself. And it was just like, why do we give the best of ourselves to the people that don't really care about us?
Yeah.
And then the people that we love, we will sit there and just bank that they will still be there even when we're not treating them in the best way. So I still see for me to keep the work that I'm doing authentic is the practice that I keep having to do with my kids. Not even with my partner. I think with him, it's not 100%. We all have our short-term moments. But because our kids are so uniquely different, and then sometimes we can see parts of ourselves in them.
Yeah.
But I have 3, and they're so different in personality. And I have to show up and meet them where they are differently. And there are times where I'm like, dang, that wasn't a good mothering moment, And what I do appreciate with children is that they're very forgiving and very gracious.
Yeah.
What I am noticing more and more is my intentional practice of recovery being a shorter time span. And so, and this is just for anyone, it's just like when you're practicing high EQ, what you want is that awareness in the moment to not have a huge gap.
That's a great point.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's like
Yeah.
way after the fact, you're just like, oh, okay.
3 years later,
Back when, you know.
I remember in 1970.
Man, and we will do that
Yeah.
because we will just be reacting in the moment. I am aware there are times I can do it well while I'm in the moment and I can feel the agitation in the conversation with my teenager. And I got to go, and he can see it. And he's like, what? Like, what? And I'm like, no, nope, finish what you had to say. I'm regulating and, you know, we'll finish the conversation. Then there's times where I can feel it, but I know I'm not regulated enough to address it. But I know that I will be if he just gives me a beat. Like we're done with the conversation, but I'm processing in the conversation and after the conversation. And I would like my goal is like within that like 30 minutes afterwards, like, hey, like yesterday.
Yeah.
Literally, you know, my goal is like, don't want to annoy the kids on their way to school. Don't want to annoy the kids when I pick them up. You know, like this is their window to, you know, exhale, to prepare for the day and to come down from the day. And my sweet teenager had asked me, he was like, hey, Mom, how was your day today? He doesn't always ask this. And so I was like, oh, it was good. You know, it was this and it was that. And then I was sharing, because I have ADHD, everything is connected. So without me being intentional, I just started going like, oh, yeah, I'm getting these notifications about your grades. They weren't so great. And so I was like, which reminds me, your third quarter grades weren't so great. And so we're having now this conversation in the car. And I'm like, I am doing exactly what I said I don't want to do. And I can see his body like, oh, like really, we're talking about this now. And I was keeping my tone though, like, hey, this is how me and your dad want to support you. Here's where we're going to do things differently, blah, 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 blah. But I was bothered internally, like that we're having this conversation now. Agreed with everything I said. Didn't take anything back.
Right.
The tone was, to me, perfect. But I didn't like it, the timing. So I want to say maybe 20 minutes later, I was like, hey, you know, we had that conversation in the car. We didn't need to have that conversation in the car. And I apologize for that. I stick to what I've said, but I really should have given you space and waited to have that conversation. And he was like, agreed, and I appreciate it.
Wow.
It's practice, like literally daily. But I feel like my kids are the ones to keep me grounded and authentic in this work, because integrity is such a big value piece for me. So I never want to teach, preach, whatever, anything that I'm not doing myself.
Yeah.
And so it just doesn't land the same way to me. And so that's my hardest place. My children.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I think, you know, any good parent has plenty of moments where you feel like we could have done better. And I think if you don't acknowledge that somewhat consistently, you're probably not being a good parent because you're not even thinking about that shit. You know what I mean?
That part.
So, yeah, I think that's, so I had a founder talk community, the founders that have been on the show, we have a group chat and stuff. And one of the questions on there was, what's one actionable thing that they can do today to elevate your EQ, and what result would it give you? And maybe we've touched on some of it.
Some of it, yeah. You know, going back to the bedrock, which is that awareness piece. If they can start, one, checking in with themselves at least a couple times a day. Like, how do I feel right now? And then, you know, after a situation, how do I feel about that? Like, how did I feel about that conversation? How did I show up? And then bring in the feedback piece and start incorporating that more often. Because how many people are intentionally looking out for feedback?
Yeah, not many. It's usually a review or some formal thing. Or I think that's one big takeaway that I took away from this, and hopefully you guys listening did, is, you know, enter each day with intention around how am I showing up, how am I feeling, but also, am I getting feedback and giving feedback? Is it a culture, not just a review every 3 months?
Yeah, and it just, how can I make this part of our daily conversation within my team, with my colleagues, where it's almost like asking, like, how's the weather?
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like, yeah, you know, did that run too long? Because we're bad at that. You know, a meeting running too long, you know, it's like, did that run too long? did I give enough space for people to process? Because sometimes we will, especially as founders and leaders, we will go to the person who's either the quickest to respond, the loudest to respond, or the first to respond. Well, that's the quickest, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we have different types of people working for us. We have people who are more slower in processing. And so it's like maybe in the meetings to go, hey, here's something that a question or something we're putting out there. Before anyone say anything, can we just like wait 20 seconds or so, just to process it, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say. And then for those who are still processing, shoot me an email afterwards, because some people need that time to digest, to hear everybody's perspectives and then go, and usually these are the introverts who are just great processors, but it just takes a little longer. So for founders, it's like, one, start asking yourself, how am I feeling? Like even in my body, like am I becoming more aware of how emotions are showing up for me? And then two, how am I creating opportunities for feedback and making it normal?
That's good. Yeah. Part of the culture.
Part of the culture.
You wrote a book called The Color of Emotional Intelligence.
Yes, sir.
What is that about? And then what made you write that book?
Okay. So in essence, the thesis of that book is that if we elevate our collective EQ, we can create spaces where all of us feel like we belong, that we're creating psychologically safe spaces for everyone, regardless of their backgrounds. I highlight how, though emotional intelligence in general is a black and white skill, there's so much color in between. Because as a person who is either neurodivergent, who's black, who is a woman, who is queer, these identities actually play a role in how we use our emotional intelligence. And those who have been systemically marginalized are going to have a higher level of social awareness. They're going to be reading the room quicker than whoever is the dominant culture that's in the space.
Like the street smarts almost, right?
Yeah. Definitely. And so you're using EQ almost as a survival skill and not necessarily a relational skill. So I highlight that piece, but then like I take it up a notch. It's like, okay, so now that you're aware that your colleagues, your peers that are of different ethnic backgrounds or disabilities, et cetera, are showing up differently in their space. They're either code switching or masking or just, presenting and performing. That's causing them to actually not be their full authentic self. What if you can now practice your own EQ to be aware that, is this space actually a space for everyone to feel like they belong? And if it's not, what can I do with whatever privilege I have to create that space?
Wonderful. Well, Sarah, this was an amazing conversation. I appreciate you coming down. I was
Thank
really
you.
glued to everything that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think the audience here is going to get a lot of value from it and hopefully have some takeaways to go and work with themselves, their family, their team, because I think this is just something that shows up in all areas of your life, right?
Absolutely.
Where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so most of my work is on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about my writing, my thoughts, the way that you can work with me, my website is workingwelldaily.com. And all the other socials are just me having fun. So if you really want to just connect on a professional level, LinkedIn is definitely where you can find me.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.